Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about mixed charts. As you can see, there are a lot of figures in these two charts. Later in this video, I will talk about how to select and group them in the two details paragraphs. First of all, let's write the introductory paragraph. As you probably know, in this paragraph, we need to paraphrase the chart description. This pie chart is about what anthropology graduates from one university did after finishing their undergraduate degree course. Please keep in mind that no matter what text you are trying to paraphrase, don't paraphrase it word by word. It's much easier to paraphrase it chunk by chunk. And when possible, we can use a different construction. Now let's break this clause down into chunks. Then we first have the subject, anthropology graduates from one university. Can we use a different construction to say it? Yes, we can. We can say one university's anthropology graduates. This is a good paraphrase of the original because it uses different grammar in the noun phrase, even though the vocabulary is the same. Even better, we can change graduates to graduating students. In general, graduating students suggest those who are about to graduate or who have just graduated. The chart description says what those graduates did after finishing their undergraduate degree course. So it's obvious that those graduates were new graduates. They had just graduated. So graduating students is accurate here. Next up, the verb did. As I just mentioned, those graduates had just graduated, so we can use went on to do, what they went on to do after graduation. Now the last chunk, after finishing their undergraduate degree course, we can instead say after completing their undergraduate degree. Putting it all together, we have the pie chart displays what one university's graduating anthropology students went on to do after completing their undergraduate degree. Now the table. The table shows the salaries of the anthropologists in work after 5 years. This part is a noun phrase, right? We can change its construction by using a how clause, while the table illustrates how much the anthropologist earned after 5 years. But we haven't covered this part yet. In work means have a job. The table is about those graduates who had a job. As you can see on the pie chart, some graduates didn't have a job. Since in work means have a job, we can say how much the anthropologist who found the jobs earned after 5 years. So this is the entire introductory paragraph. Now let's move on to the overview paragraph, which is our second paragraph. In this paragraph, we describe the one most significant feature of the pie chart and the one most significant feature of the table. Now I've removed all the numbers on this pie chart for you guys so that you won't be influenced by them. What do you notice first? This biggest slice or the smallest one? I think you would notice this biggest slice first. It occupies half the pie. When it comes to pie charts, bigger slices are always more noticeable than smaller ones, aren't they? So for pie charts, you never need to mention the smallest categories in your overview paragraph. This largest category represents those who had full-time work, so we can say overall, the majority of the graduates or most of the graduates had full-time jobs. We can use majority or most when a number forms more than half of the total. Now, what is the most significant feature of the table? You may still pick the biggest numbers to report, but please notice these two numbers are lower than 50%, so you can't say something like the majority of or most of or a large proportion of the freelance consultants earned at least $100,000. You can't say 40% of the freelance consultants earned at least $100,000 either, because we are not supposed to include any specific numbers in the overview paragraph. How about we group together the two highest salary ranges? Then we have 80% of the freelance consultants that earned at least $75,000. We also have 80% of the government employees and 55% of the private sector employees that earned this much. These three numbers are quite big, so now we can use expressions like most and a great proportion. In addition, while a significant proportion of the freelance consultants and the government employees earned at least $75,000, only roughly half of the private sector employees did. Now let's move on to details paragraph 1. In this paragraph, we describe the pie chart in detail. Here, we really need to group similar categories together so that we don't report those percentages one by one. I will group together full-time work, part-time work, and unemployed because they are all about employment. Just over half of the graduates went on to work full-time, compared with only 15% working part-time and 12% unemployed. Three numbers are all reported in just one sentence with good comparisons. Next, I'm going to group together full-time postgraduate study and part-time work plus postgraduate study because they are both about study. Those who did full-time postgraduate study and those who did postgraduate study while working part-time each only made up a small minority of the graduates at 8 and 5% respectively. This is our entire details paragraph 1. We really should ignore this not long category. It doesn't have any meaning. Now the table. This table has a lot of data. The key to avoiding writing too many words is to select those that are important to report and ignore those that are unimportant. Think about it. What is this table trying to tell us? It compares the salaries of the graduates in 3 different sectors. Perhaps it's trying to make a point of which sectors pay well and which sectors don't. As you can see, these 2 sectors pay better than the last sector. The data we select should be able to help us illustrate this point of view. I think these 2 figures can show that the freelance consultants were paid pretty well. 40 of them were in the highest salary range and only 5% were in the lowest salary range. But will we omit too many figures if we only report these 2? So, like what we did in the overview paragraph, we can group the 2 highest salary ranges together and say 80% made at least $75,000. So now we have, moving on to their salaries, 80% of the freelance consultants earned at least $75,000. We will also report this 40% because this number shows this sector pays well, half of whom were in the highest salary range of more than $100,000. Whom does not refer to all the freelance consultants, but refers to those freelance consultants who earned at least $75,000. Half of those who earned at least $75,000 were in the highest salary range, right? Now we can use the same strategy to report the government sector. The percentage of the government employees that made at least $75,000 was also 80, so we can say there were also 80% of the government employees making no less than $75,000. And then we show the difference. The difference is that compared with the freelance consultants, the percentage of the government employees that were in the highest salary range is higher, and we can use although to show this difference. Although there were also 80% of the government employees making no less than $75,000, a relatively high proportion of the government employees at 50% earned at least $100,000. Now, when we report the privately employed graduates, we can just say only 55% of them made at least $75,000. We don't need to point out only 30% were in the highest salary range. This is because this 55% alone already shows this sector pays less than the other 2 sectors, since we've already said the other 2 sectors both have 80% of the graduates making at least $75,000. In comparison, only 55% of those working for private companies made a minimum of $55,000. Finally, let's add these 3 figures in the lowest salary ranges. The purpose again is to show these 2 sectors pay better than the last one because they each only have 5% of the graduates making less than $50,000. The proportions of the freelance consultants and the government employees who were in the lowest salary brackets of $25,000 to $49,999,000 both stood at only 5% versus 10% for those employed in the private sector. This is the entire essay. As you can see, I didn't report any figure in this salary range. I don't think these figures are important. Most data includes things that are either difficult to report or are not worth reporting, and the best thing to do with them is simply to ignore them and concentrate on the things you can report. So hoping that you guys learned something about grouping and selecting data. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss the next video. I will see you guys soon.